Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of VertoTalks on Air. First one of the new year, basically. So, hope you all had a great start to 2026. I'm Nicole. I'm part of the growth team at VertoDigital. A super quick intro for who we are and what we do. If you don't know, Verto is a B2B digital marketing agency. We specialize in helping B2B companies grow their marketing generated pipeline through services like paid media, SEO and content, data analytics. And this webinar series is basically our way of bringing the marketing community together online, diving into different hot topics from the industry, sharing our own um, insights from our own work, practical tips, and all that. We've shared a lot of content in the past few months, even in the past year, about AI search, um, Google's AI overviews in different formats, including another webinar we did. But today we're doing something a bit different. We're diving into how Google's AI overviews are impacting user behavior and the performance of your B2B paid campaigns. So leading today's session are Alexandra and Lachezar from the advertising team at VertoDigital. They walk us through the research analysis they did and all their findings and give us practical tips on what we can all do to protect our campaign performance. If you have questions for Alex and Wachu, please drop them in the comments. We'll answer them at the end of the live. So yeah, with that, I can give the mic to Alex to start things off. I just have to unmute yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. Nikki, thanks for the intro and setting the stage. Just before we dive into the slides, I just wanted to mention that this topic has been very hot, obviously, throughout the entire past year. In my career, I don't think I've seen anything as disruptive as what happened with AI search. So it's very exciting. I know that everyone is trying to get a grasp of what's going on. And that's how we decided to do this. First, we wanted to make an internal session. We wanted to understand what's out there. Is there anything like a trend that we should be looking at? How should we approach looking at our portfolio and analyze the performance of our clients? So it was a great session internally. A lot was shared, a lot was learned, and we decided to externalize essentially. So if you can share the screen, we can dive deep.
Yes.
All right. The agenda today is quite a few points, but basically we will walk you through what changed in search throughout the past year, and especially in Google. Then we'll walk you through what was the process of identifying different hypotheses and really approaching our portfolio analysis. Then we'll definitely make a stop on what you can do today in order to kind of be part of everything new that is going on, what you can do in your specifically paid search campaigns, and hopefully we'll also have time for some questions. Okay. Small recap, just a few scorecards here. First, basically, there are a number of researchers out there. Maybe the nuances between the ratios of how people are searching today, traditionally going to Google or Bing or going into the AI platforms would vary slightly or greatly. In this research that we got from McKinsey survey, they were asking consumers what is their preference in terms of platforms for performing a search. 30% of people basically the generation of boomers is still heavily selecting Google and Bing, so going at it a bit more traditionally, whereas 44% of the consumers are already used to going directly into ChatGPT, the different Google platforms like AI Mode, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, all the others. I'm not going to mention them all. But as of today, 50% of all of the Google searches already have an AI summary. So this is definitely reshaping the landscape. On the Google side, what happened in the past year and even starting mid 2024, AI overviews were first introduced. Throughout an entire year, there were quite a few experiments. We were seeing AI overviews in different parts of the search results page. We were not seeing them. We were seeing them along paid results, organic, up front, up on top, below. Things were really all over the place. In 2025, in May, Google released AI Mode, and basically all the AI overviews rollout was completed. So with this change, Google got into the conversational search interface of their own. And with this, they also entered the game of monetizing this big shift. So AI Max was introduced alongside with AI Mode, and we are still learning how to make the best out of that. Next on, we have a few statistics, some observations. Like I mentioned, they helped us form our hypothesis. Firstly, we have a research from McKinsey again. It was conducted in October 2025, and it focused on how people are interacting with LLM platforms. When do they approach them? Is it just to make a discovery? As you can see in this screenshot, basically there's an equal distribution of percentages. Whereas we were thinking that people would just go for discovery in LLMs, it turns out that the entire decision-making process is now part of kind of touches in an LLM platform. So how is this shaping user behavior on Google search specifically? In this study, we are seeing that, and I'm sure this will not be surprising to anyone, but when there is an AI summary or some kind of an AI overview on the page with results, people would not be clicking through to the website. So CTRs would be dropping, sessions would be ending more frequently than not. And talking about CTRs, in this other study, it's focused entirely on CTRs. We can see how major the shift is, how users engage with search engines is just so dramatically different. Even when there are no AI overviews on the search results page, we are seeing that CTRs are dropping for both organic and paid results. So yeah, this is showing us how the user behavior has shifted entirely in the past year. So the lowest drop here, the paid CTR with 20%, maybe indicates that when there are no AI overviews present on the search results page, we might have an opportunity. We will be exploring that in the next couple of slides. But definitely when there is an AI overview and your brand is not cited is when you're losing the most. So those two things are something that we should be approaching with different strategies when planning ahead. So here, if we think that the opportunity is keywords that are not showing along AI overviews, this graph here really well pictures things. So throughout the course of the last year and even more, there was a more or less steady trend in CTRs when an AI overview is not present. But after May 2025, we are seeing a very sharp decline. It might have to do with something like a major SERP layout change, Maybe it pushed the ads further down the results, and this is what caused it. But it's interesting enough that this is exactly when the AI mode was released, firstly in the US. So it might be a coincidence. But in any case, when your brand is cited and in an AI overview result, CTRs and clicks overall would be rising 35% for organic, 91% for paid clicks, and this is going to make a huge difference. Okay, so how do we tie these CTRs with conversions? Of course, this is the next step, because essentially our understanding of how people would be interacting with LLMs is for discovery with longer informational search queries. But different study was showing that this trend is also not the same anymore. And now AI overviews are no longer purely top of funnel. They're increasingly appearing on commercial queries where ad spend is definitely most concentrated, specifically in accounts where performance and conversion optimization is a focus. So in the following sections, we'll explore this correlation and see the data behind the conversions before and after this shift happened, which we saw after May specifically. And yeah, we're going to search for trends, just not just around the conversions, but also the quality of the conversions. This is something that we're always focusing on in our client portfolio. And before I hand over the stage to Lucho, here are the 5 hypotheses which we outlined. We are going to look at whether or not the CTRs are decreasing in our accounts. Are the clicks also going down? Do we have a rising CPC? What's happening with the quality conversions? The SQLs, are they going up or down? And what happens with top and absolute top impression rate as a percentage of the total impressions? This is an interesting indicator of how the paid ads are being served and prioritized by the algorithms. And over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Can you share the screen? Thank you. Okay, so before we move on to the actual analysis and the testing of the hypothesis, just a quick word about the data that stands behind the analysis. So essentially, as an agency that deals primarily with B2B companies, as you can imagine, the data behind the analysis consists, well, basically entirely of B2B software companies in the tech sector. Most of them are also, all of them actually in the data are in the US market. This is, in this case, especially it's an appropriate decision, seeing as how, all of these updates and all of these features get rolled out first in the States and then gradually rolled out to the rest of the world. The timeline of this analysis was basically 2025 from January to October. And the objective in most of these accounts in terms of search campaigns was mostly middle to bottom of funnel lead generation search campaigns. And also one quick word here on basically an additional kind of data separation that we did was that we decided to separate the accounts on which we started work basically in 2025. The reason we did this is because usually when we start working with a brand new account, there's quite a significant infrastructure change and strategic change undergoing there. Meaning we basically changed the entire strategy in some places. We redo the entire infrastructure, which causes a lot of fluctuations in terms of performance. So it wouldn't necessarily be ideal to include those accounts in the analysis here because they would influence the outcome of the analysis essentially. So the only accounts we've included here are basically accounts that we've been working on long term, so before 2025, because these accounts are very likely to be accounts where we've already kind of established a structure that drives a certain performance that it's less likely for us to change anything significant throughout the year, though it's not entirely excluded, of course. But yeah, these are mainly the sort of the details that go behind the data collection here. And now moving on to the first hypothesis that Alex mentioned. So is there a significant trend of decreasing CTR or click-through rate across accounts in the portfolio? So first, I just want to also give a quick word on what you're seeing in this graph here. Basically, we have two lines in the graph, both of which here are indicating a downward slope. The light blue line is, you can consider this a trend line, right? So this doesn't indicate the separate data points on the graph. It just indicates the general direction and the trend of the data. And then we have the dark blue line, which actually indicates all the data points, for each month that we see. And then you can also see here the equation next to CTR in the graph, which also indicates the R squared, an R squared value. What an R squared value is essentially this value, if it is close to 1, it indicates that the model explains a high percentage of the variance in the dependent variable. So it basically measures how well the data fits the model and how much of the variation in the data is explained by that model. In practical terms, a high R squared value confirms a strong correlation between both variables, and the closer the value is to 1, basically the more predictable the data is within the range measured. So here, as we can see in this graph, we have an R squared value of 0.68, basically close to 0.7, which it doesn't indicate a super strong, because it's close to 1, but it's not quite up there. So it doesn't indicate a super strong relationship, but it's still a moderate fit, which, considering that we can see here the trend line indicates a negative, a downward slope, and we can see that the data indicates that there is basically a clear correlation between the CTR and the months of the year, meaning that with each passing month, we are observing basically a decline in CTR. And if we were to talk purely in numbers, from January to October, basically there is a 54% decline in CTR, starting from January up until the final measurement in October. So seeing as how we have a moderate fit here in terms of the R squared value, and there's a clear trend going downwards for the CTR, I think we can conclude here that basically the hypothesis is accepted, and we are observing a trend of decreasing click-through rate across the accounts. Moving on to the second hypothesis, which is a logical continuation of the first. If we are seeing a decreasing CTR, we probably would also be seeing decreasing clicks across the accounts in the portfolio. And is that the case? You can see that the graph is somewhat similar to the first one. Again, we have the trend line negatively positioned, trending in a negative direction, that is, with an R squared value that is also basically similar to the other one of 0.66, which again indicates a moderate fit, which means that we have a moderate relationship between the two variables. So again, if we look at pure numbers, starting from January up until October, we see a total of 37% drop in clicks in the accounts across our portfolio, which would again, of course, lead us to basically accept the second hypothesis and to say that we are observing a decreasing click ratio. Moving on to the third hypothesis, again, consistent with the logic behind CTR and clicks, would be for us to be seeing basically increasing CPC or cost per click across accounts in the portfolio. Does the data bear so? It does actually. If you look even here on this graph, you can see the trend line here is this time it's actually opposite. It's positively leaning, and also the R squared value is actually even stronger than the previous two graphs. We have an R squared value of 0.82, which is significantly closer to 1, and actually indicates a very, very strong relationship between the two variables. And I mean, we can see it also in pure numbers, right? So beginning of January, across the portfolio, we have a CPC of around a little bit more than $4. And by the end of October, we're looking at a CPC of more than basically $8. So that's around 100% increase for that time period measurement. And you can see actually also that the CPC is basically steadily increasing throughout the months. In this case, this is probably the strongest indicator, even so far, out of all of our measurements, that there is definitely an increase, a significant increase in cost per click across the accounts in the portfolio. Therefore, I think we can also basically accept this hypothesis as well. So the fourth hypothesis has to do with SQLs, or let's call them bottom of funnel conversions. The hypothesis here is, of course, that they have not experienced a significant decline in 2025 yet. The reason for this, the reasoning behind this, right, is that even if there are decreasing CTRs, clicks, and maybe even also leads, that would not necessarily, influence the pipeline and the bottom of funnel conversions that we're seeing. Is that true, however? Well, maybe it is to a degree. We can see here that there's actually even a positive, an upward slope or a positive correlation between the variables. However, the R-squared value is basically very low. It's 0.25. So that essentially means that there's quite a lot of statistical noise in the data, and it's really hard to determine either way whether there is a significant correlation between the two variables. So it's hard for us here to really conclude if there's any increase or decrease in the SQLs across the account, which means that there's quite a lot of variance, and ultimately means that we cannot really establish a strong direction either way. So from what we see, at least, we can confirm that we did not experience a significant decline in 2025 in terms of SQLs. And finally, moving on to hypothesis 5, is there a significant trend of declining top or absolute top impression rate positions as a percentage of total impressions? So here the data is actually quite damning, and this is something that we've been noticing basically throughout the year, last year, which is that progressively the top position impression share rate has been dropping, and then the bottom position impression share has actually been increasing in basically almost all of our accounts. And here on the both graphs, you can see the trend line seems to be very subtly leaning negatively, or for the top position impression share, and then very subtly leaning positively or upwards for the bottom position impression share. But that all that indicates is, of course, that there isn't here a sharp, essentially a sharp decline for the top position impressions, or a sharp peak for the bottom position. It's a gradual kind of a altering of both metrics. And looking at the R-squared value for both graphs, you can see that it's basically identical. It's an R-squared value of 0.88, which is very close to 1. So here we can also establish quite a strong correlation between both variables.
Can you, Lucho, just explain what it means that the absolute top impression rate is going up or down?
So basically, absolute top or absolute top impression rate means how often basically your ad gets shown on the top of the page. Ever since the introduction of AI overviews, basically there's less positions on the top of the SERP in terms of for paid ads specifically, and we are seeing a significant shift from the top position to the bottom position impressions, meaning that a lot of the ads that without AI overviews may have actually shown on the top position placements are now showing on, you can, in Google Ads, it's called other, but it's ultimately a bottom position impression share rate, right? So yeah, basically the AI overviews is kind of shifting, it's taking up more space from the SERP, and more ads are getting relegated to a bottom position impression share. The reason why that may be alarming is because, and as you probably see in your own accounts, basically bottom position placements very, very rarely end up in any conversions, in clicks less so. So, in terms of comparison between what is actually more profitable and more a bigger driver of conversions and performance, it's absolutely the top position impression shares placements. So that's why essentially this is very important for us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And so, as I said, the graph here is quite definitive. I think you can see the top position impression share rates at the start of the year are around basically close to 70. So we have at the start of the year somewhere next something close to a 65-35 or a 70-30 split between top position and bottom position. And then looking at all the way at the end of the year, basically we have almost leveling, right? We have maybe 55% of top position impression share rate against a 45 or even higher position impression rate in certain cases. So moving on, after we've accepted all of our hypotheses, we actually have here, because we managed to actually collect a lot of data for a broad range of metrics, We also wanted to include some additional graphs and additional analysis based on some other metrics that we thought we may find interesting. We didn't necessarily create any hypotheses for them, but in any case, it'll be curious to see how some other metrics basically shifted throughout 2025. Starting with impressions, basically, we wanted to see if there's going to be any change in impressions throughout the year, whether positive or negative. But as it turns out, you can see there isn't really that much of an indication of any significant trend throughout the year from January to October in terms of impressions. The R squared value is very low, and then the trend line is very vaguely going upwards. But again, because with the value being so low, we can assume that there's quite a lot of variance in the data set, which means that we can't necessarily conclude anything other than we're probably not seeing a significant drop in impressions for the majority of accounts in our portfolio. Another interesting question here is in terms of leads and cost per lead, right? Because here the question is, well, if the clicks are decreasing along with the CTR, if the cost per click is increasing, can that actually influence, we've seen that it doesn't necessarily influence the pipeline, but does it influence leads? And it may appear to actually do so. You can see that for the graph and leads, there is a very clearly recognizable downward slope for the trend line, indicating a negative direction. And we also have a moderate R-squared value of 0.68, or basically almost 0.7, which does actually indicate that we have seen a reduction in leads progressively throughout the year. And at the same time, we also have the cost per lead going ever so slightly up, with a slightly lower R-squared value that nevertheless, I think, indicates that we are also observing there a shift and a moderate correlation between the increasing cost and the progressive well-being of the year. So some other interesting observations in terms of particularly organic and paid traffic. Here the question is, well, if we have more AI overviews, if more people are basically looking up answers in AI, going through this whole user journey with the help assisted by AI or purely through AI tools, does that actually affect our organic or paid traffic? And looking at the organic traffic as a percentage of the whole, and also the paid traffic as a percentage of the total traffic that is for each account, we can't really say that we notice any significant correlation for both, meaning both the R-squared values here are very low, and there's a very faint trend line going downwards. But overall, it's hard for us to kind of conclude here that there's any decrease in paid traffic or organic traffic as a percentage of the total traffic that our accounts in the portfolio have. So that means, at least for now, that the traffic from these sources is not necessarily decreasing. Is the LLM traffic increasing, however? Not surprisingly, yes. At least in terms of pure volume, we can see on the left graph that we do actually have a pretty strong correlation here again. We have a strong trend line indicating a positive correlation and an upwards growth, and an R-squared value of 0.73, which again is quite close to 1, and which means that the model is again pretty strong. Now, looking at the LLM traffic, however, as a percentage of the total, the picture is actually a little bit muddier here. The R-squared value is relatively lower, quite lower actually, and the trend line is not as consistent. So even though we may be seeing some increase in LLM traffic, capturing this real estate, this whole percentage of the whole traffic, it certainly doesn't appear to be eating up basically more of the total traffic, even though as pure volume, meaning as pure traffic, it's increasing. The share that it takes, it doesn't seem to be so, mostly because probably the other sources are not declining. On the opposite end, they're actually either increasing or staying steady. So after this analysis, I guess seeing how the landscape has changed in terms of clicks, CTR, what are some safeguards that we have at our disposal? What are some optimizational tools that we have where we can influence basically the way that our paid ads are being interacted with by users and our performance ultimately? Well, we have basically two approaches. both of them basically provided by Google. So we have AI Max and Performance Max. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Performance Max. Now it's been out for quite a few years, I think, already. So most of you probably have had time to dip your toes in it. But for those that are not familiar with AI Max is basically a new, let's call it a functionality, a new setting that you can enable in search campaigns. And what it does is it essentially goes beyond targeting settings and sort of assets that you give the campaign, meaning that if you have AMX enabled in your campaigns, the algorithm, the AI-powered algorithm, can actually go beyond what you set as keywords in targeting or beyond what you provide as assets in terms of headline, description, ad copy, and even landing pages. And basically, if it decides, it serves the search query, the user, whatever it decides, meaning it can generate new assets. It can show any landing page from your website, even if you have not provided it in a specific ad. And it can obviously also target users that have entered the search query that doesn't necessarily match with your existing keywords. So it goes beyond your settings. The key thing here about AMX and Performance Max and why they're so important is because basically they're more or less the only way to actually access that AI inventory in Google. Basically ads and AI overviews in AI mode. This is strictly said so by Google essentially. In terms of advantages, AI Max should offer more granular control and reporting transparency than typical automated campaigns. And then for Performance Max, I'm sure you're aware, the goal there is basically driving total volume and basically creating a full funnel sort of reach structure where you reach customers not only in search, but also in YouTube, display, Discover, Gmail, Maps, and so on. However, the question here is, are these two methods actually effective? In our experiences, in our observations, they provide mixed results. For AMX in particular, what we've seen is we've already tried it in quite a few of our accounts. And again, we've had mixed results. For us, it has worked mostly as a tool by finding incremental conversions rather than it being primarily a performance driver. Meaning that if you have campaigns that are struggling to lift off and are not really performing well in terms of conversion volumes, you can't really expect AMX to do the legwork for you and to kind of resuscitate dead campaigns. AMX is most useful when you're actually having performing campaigns as a sort of, like I said, this incremental conversion generator. The only thing is, however, AMX, unfortunately, it behaves quite differently across accounts. So like I said, it's ultimately a setting in the search campaign that you can enable. However, how it behaves within those search campaigns is quite different. So in some accounts, AMX can overtake the entire spend. And basically what that means is it would actually aggressively show ads beyond your keywords. It will show ads beyond your own ad copy and assets that you provide, and also beyond basically the landing pages you provided. However, there's also accounts where it's not so aggressive, and actually it takes a very small amount, like 10 or 20% of the spend, meaning that actually most of the search campaign is actually still serving mostly on your keywords, on your provided ads, and your landing pages that you've indicated in the account. So there is quite a degree of variation between how AMX behaves in certain accounts. It's hard to say why that's the reason. It's not necessarily match types as we've seen in our experience, but it's something to keep in mind when doing future experiments. And then in terms of actual results from AMX, in terms of conversions, basically on average in AMX enabled campaigns, we found the average percent of leads due to AMX functionalities, the ones that I've explained just now, to be around 30%, while the average percentage of SQLs was around 13%. So there is a drop-off, especially in terms of SQLs, which could be concerning, meaning that the traffic that AMX does bring may not be as high quality as the traffic that otherwise a search campaign brings. But like I said, this is just a word of caution. We've had positive experiences, and a lot of people are optimistic actually to try it and kind of migrate more campaigns into AMX. So, it's to be decided basically on just how effective AMX is. And then for Performance Max, if you've operated in a B2B space, I'm sure you've already probably experimented with it. And our observations are not going to fundamentally differ with yours. But again, we've seen mixed results. The truth is that it's highly effective for e-commerce, unfortunately, less so for B2B lead generation. Basically, it's black box automation. It prioritizes raw conversion volume over the lead quality. And for us, at least, in a lot of accounts, that has frequently resulted in quite a lot of spam and bot-generated form fills. So it has been a struggle, to be completely fair, to basically run PMAX and have it perform as well as we want to. And then this is just a quick AMX checklist. Basically, this is a kind of a checklist that indicates what you need in order to get AMX running, or what it is recommended for you to have in terms of setup in the campaigns. Stuff like conversion volume. So it's recommended that we have at least 30 conversions in the last 30 days in the search campaign that we want to enable AMX in. And then also other stuff related to creative, asset quality, and other strategic controls. I will not go through the entire list because we don't really have the time right now. But if anyone wants to check it, you can just go and review the presentation later and kind of compare. So finally, in terms of final takeaways, how can we basically assess where we find ourselves in terms of our search campaigns, how much AI is impacting our search campaigns and our accounts. First, of course, we would have to analyze the way, in a similar way that we did, our basic KPIs. So analyzing our CTRs, our clicks, cost per clicks, top impression rate, leads, SQL. When analyzing these, can we spot any trends, positive or negative? And if we do notice that, for example, clicks and conversion are tanking, we should check our match types. And basically, if we have a very narrow targeting in terms of maybe only phrase match and exact match, we should consider basically broadening our campaigns and our targeting, including broad match, and maybe consider even entering an AI overview inventory by either enabling AMX or maybe even giving PMAX another shot. And then in terms of AMX, if we do try to run with it, do we see after running AMX for some time, let's say a month, basically, do we see AMX functionalities such as expanded keywords and landing pages taking over our ad spend? Is AMX actually devouring basically, the serving of our entire campaign? And even if it is that ad spend and are those functionalities profitable? Meaning, are we generating the SQLs and opportunities we want? And what are the costs by doing that from AMX? And is the quality the same or has it dipped? If basically you're spending less on your target keywords at the expense of AMX expansions, however, you're probably losing on impression share, and either a budget boost or basically a rethinking of the strategy might be a good idea. And then finally, for Performance Max, a very key question we have to ask ourselves when enabling is basically how is it aligned with our brand and non-brand strategy? Which channels does our investment go to? We would have to review all the inventory, including search, display, YouTube, Gmail, and so on. And then also checking our search terms. So do we get branded or non-branded traffic? And what type of conversions are we yielding from these? Leads, SQL, what is the quality, and so on. And yeah, so basically that, I think, brings our presentation to a close. And we can, I think, head to the Q&A section.
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot for this session with you and Alex. It was very interesting. Lots of data for sure. We'll make sure, by the way, to post the slides in the comments, but in like a post on LinkedIn, so everyone can download it and check it out on their own time. Let me check for questions in the comments. There are quite a few comments, but not necessarily questions. Just people saying hi and thanks for sharing this information. So yeah, I don't think there are any questions, I mean. But if anyone has a question, they can drop it in the comments and we can answer it offline directly in the comment section. And before we wrap up, just a very quick note. The recording of the session is going to be live on the LinkedIn event page, so everyone can watch it if they were not able to attend the live stream. We'll also be posting it on our YouTube channel very soon, which reminds me, we have a YouTube channel now. We already have a few videos up, but many more are coming very soon. So if you guys are interested, you can go check it out. I can also drop that link in the comments. And yeah, please, if you want to share what you've seen in your work, in your experience, in your accounts, that would be amazing. Always great to compare notes. Actually, there is one question, two questions, so we can answer them. I will just put them on screen. Did you change content throughout the year? Did it have any impact?
Well, I mean, seeing as this is basically spanning our entire portfolio of data behind this analysis, we definitely did change content for, I'm sure, a lot of the accounts. It's hard to really measure just how much. It's not something that we measured to just say how much, but we did. And in terms of impact, at least in the accounts that, well, let's say I've been responsible about, I wouldn't necessarily say so, with some caveats. I don't know if, Alex, you have any experiences here?
Yeah, basically, if content has been changed, it has been just a normal rhythm of introducing new content to the campaigns, not specifically around the shifts happening. So yeah.
Yep. And another question. Curious what adjustments your clients made throughout the year. I'm not sure if that's yeah.
Yeah, I guess we were trying to really assess the situation and shift budget. We were wondering at one point with some of our clients, should we double down on brand budget, because we want to make sure that if someone is at least aware of the brand, this is where conversions are flowing in from. Do we want to go and spend more on brand, or do we want to do actually exactly the opposite? If we are having a performance max campaign, and like in the previous slide Lucho mentioned, if we have a PMAX campaign serving very well on a non-brand searches and primarily on the search inventory, do we just want to, instead of whitelisting the AI Max functionality, just boost the budget for Performance Max instead? So we've tried different things like that in the second half of 2025, essentially. But like we said, we don't have the recipe yet because it's very much different from account to account. And we are going to keep on testing.
Great. Thanks for answering that, Alex. We don't have any more questions, so I think we can wrap things up. So yeah, again, thanks, Alex and Watcher, for the great session, and thanks to everyone who joined us live. Bye, and see you
Thanks,
on
everyone.
the next one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.